Great. Well, thank you, Mayor and Council, and members of the public. Today's presentation to you is, as you said, Mayor, the beginning of a 6-week process to get to an ultimate adopted budget by the City Council. I'm going to present to you the fiscal year 2020 budget, and we have several things that will take place after today's presentation, including 4 work sessions for the Council, where some of the key departments will present to you their budgets and some of the improvements in an in-depth way. We also have 5 community hearings on the budget, so we'll be going to each of the city council districts and spending about an hour with the community on the budget and getting their feedback, and the council can use that in the ultimate adoption of a budget. We'll also have 3 public hearings in the city council chamber, 2 on the tax rate and 1 on the budget here in the chambers. And then ultimately, city council's duty and role in our form of government is to adopt a budget, and the date is set for that to be September 17th. So with that, let me kind of go through the budget with you. You'll have a budget document that the budget office has provided or will be providing. That document will also be online after today's presentation and available to the public. We want our budget to be transparent and open to the community. The good thing, unlike the federal government, is our budget is balanced. So the revenues that we're bringing in is what we're going to spend. We will have a balanced budget. We do have one today, and that's what I'm presenting. The budget addresses council's priorities and the needs of the community that we have heard and that I have heard. It focuses on our basics, including public safety, streets, our park system, maintenance in all those areas, and as well some strategic planning to help advance forward some of our major assets, to include some of our corridors and some of our park systems. And then the budget is consistent with the council-approved financial policies that we just approved last week. And so the financial amounts and the reserves and that type of thing is consistent with the council-approved policies. In summary here, and I'll go through the detail, but the budget increases funding for street maintenance. It's the highest level, I think I'm safe in saying this, that the city has ever seen for street maintenance and reconstruction. It has long-term sustainable plans for increasing our public safety personnel, our sworn personnel. It increases mowing and maintenance in parks and increases our maintenance and safety on our beaches. And it saves dollars by redirecting resources from contract work, bringing some of that work in-house. As you'll see, it saves us a total of $4.8 million in this first fiscal year. Now, we want the budget to be transparent, as I said, and it's going to be available to the public shortly here this afternoon online. But we will be going out to the community. You can see here the list of those community hearings in the districts. They're primarily at our libraries or at our senior centers, and they've been coordinated with the council member who will be the host of each one of those events. In summary, our total budget, this is all funds, including the capital budget, is $1.1 billion. I think this will be the first year we've reached that billion dollar mark. That budget includes several of the component budgets you can see, like the general fund. It includes our enterprise funds and our special revenue funds, the debt service fund as well, and the capital budget as well. That's $327 million. The budget for the current year, just to put it into context, is $983 million. So we're going from close to $1 billion to a $1.1 billion budget. When we look at the most known or the most talked about, which is our general fund budget, there's a 7% increase in the budget year over year. From the current year of $253 million, the proposed is $270 million. This is a neat graphic. You probably want to study it a little bit after the presentation, but it has two elements. The revenues of the city are in that black circle that encompasses the middle slices. The revenues of the city are in the black outlined circles, and then the expenditures are in the internal slices of the pie. You can see public safety, which is our most essential and most important basic city service, consumes 54% of the budget, rightly so. But you can see it's an expensive service delivery item to the community. It takes all of our property tax revenue and just about all of the sales tax to provide that basic city service. And then you can see some of the other major city services like solid waste, streets, the transfer to streets, and then our parks and recreation. The improvements in the budget and the reason we're able to move forward as we will in this recommended budget primarily, and it's not exclusively, but primarily is because of growth in our revenues, as this chart shows us. We have growth in each of the major revenue categories to include property tax, and that's in part because of the rate increase, and I'll talk to you about that. Our sales tax revenue is doing pretty good. This is a comparison of the amount year over year, so 2019 to 2020, 7.4% more in property tax and 5.5% more in sales tax. If we just focus on the property tax and values for a moment, we have a little bit better growth in our property values this year over the past budget year. So combined growth with base value increases and new development is a 4% growth. That's according to our appraisal district. And you can see that's up from the 3.4% growth that we experienced last year at this time. And as the mayor mentioned, I'm recommending in this budget the 2-cent property tax rate increase that the voters already asked for and approved at the polls. So our tax rate for property tax will go from 62 cents for every $100 of valuation to 64 cents, consistent with the prior approved commitment from the voter and the resident. Just to put property tax into context a little bit, we hear a lot of negativity about property tax, but the city's portion of the property tax payment that we make each year is less than 25%, less than a quarter of the budget. It's about 24% to be exact. As we know, the majority of our taxes go to pay for important school services and through our school districts. And then when you combine the county with the Del Mar College, that consumes the other quarter of the tax bill. We do provide relief, though. The City Council has been aggressive in providing targeted relief to our senior population. And in this budget, we'll forego $13 million in property tax revenue. Because of our senior exemption. Once you reach 65, there's an exemption amount taken off the value of your home. And also the city approved the tax freeze. So once a senior reaches 65, that is the final increment in their property tax payment. That rate that they pay or that amount that they pay the city is frozen for the rest of their life in that home. Let's talk a little bit about the improvements. There's $17 million in the general fund for new improvements. These are enhancements in our basic city services, as this table shows. We have improvements in police and fire of about $7-8 million. Parks and recreation is some improvements. A big transfer to the streets fund for more residential streets. And we have other departments with some enhancements as well. All these are made, as we mentioned earlier, within our existing rates, our tax rates, with the exception of that 2-cent increase and the property tax rate that has been approved by the voters. So there's no other tax increases to accomplish what I'm going to recommend in detail. And excuse me, and it's important to point out that with these improvements to our services that the community has asked for, we're still able to stay within a strong financial reserve position. And so when we look at our total financial reserves, we'll have 25% of our general fund budget in financial reserves, which is pretty solid. $66 million in the form of a contingency reserve, and then some of our assigned reserves gives us that amount. In fact, this amount is slightly higher than the current year budget. So with that background, let me walk us through a little bit on some of the major enhancements that I'm recommending. These have been developed first by a professional recommendation from either the chiefs, the police or fire chief, or the director of the department working with their teams. One of the first things I did when I started in May was started meeting with all the department heads and the budget director, and a few other folks were in there. Several of the assistant city managers participated in either each or all of the meetings. And we heard every department present their budget presentation. And the recommendations that we're presenting are consistent with that professional recommendation. How can we better our services in each of those departments? So in the police department, we're recommending 5 new police officer positions to be funded in the budget. And also the policy commitment that we would add 5 each of the next 4 years for a total of 25 over a 5-year period. So the first 5 would be added in fiscal year 20 police officers, and then an additional 5 for each of the ensuing 4 years for a total of 25 police officers. We're recommending to replace the radios. We know that in the bond program, the emergency management system, public safety, I should say, radio system kind of backbone is being replaced, the antennas and other elements. But we needed money and a plan to replace the actual devices, the handheld radios. This budget does that by funding 1/3 of the first year of a 3-year no-interest payment to the radio maker, and we'll be replacing 800 public safety radios. We'll also put in all our police car in-car video systems. That's included in the budget. We're making upgrades to the 911 call center. We've done so already this year in some of the technology, but we're adding staff to help support the large number of calls coming in. We'll also add a digital forensic analyst. This will help in internet crimes, and it's an important component in the police department. And then we're looking at overtime funding to improve our beach safety. The police department will increase patrols by adding overtime dollars to their budget. In our fire department, we're going to expand the traditional cadet class size from what is normally about 34 to 50. So that means we'll train 16 more fire cadets to help alleviate a vacancy issue in that department. And so what that's going to do is we'll have professional full-time firefighters, but it'll help us to bring down the overtime budget that's existing today in that department, their overtime expenditures. We'll be adding an additional, we'll be adding an additional medic unit for the fire department as well. We want to maintain our strong response times, but as the city grows, it's important to add additional EMS personnel to reach the resident at those critical times. The budget will also add an important position for the development community. A fire protection engineer will be added. Today, we're outsourcing that function up to Fort Worth, believe it or not, and so the response times are slow. There's nobody here physically to inspect the building as it's being constructed. And so this will be added. In fact, I've asked the department to advertise it already in anticipation that the council approves it. There's also, we did send you a letter on this, but the city's recommending an increase to the firefighter retirement system. And we're also going to develop a plan for a multi-year look at this fund so that it's more financially solid. And then in our animal control, still in the area of public safety, we're recommending the addition of 2 positions, a live release coordinator, as well as some kennel technician, 1 kennel technician, and then also additional dollars for mosquito or vector control services in the community. Okay, in our parks area, which is very important to the community, and we have some great assets out there, we're basically going to increase maintenance and service in those park areas. So we have additional funding to reduce the mowing cycles, which now are every 30 days, to 14 days. We'll be able to mow the grass more frequently in our parks. We're adding money for aquatic facility maintenance and maintenance of several of our park amenities and irrigation systems. An important thing for the community is we're going to recommend, or we are recommending in this budget, the elimination of the pool entrance fees. So today, a family per person can pay up to $5 to go into one of our swimming pools. We're recommending to cancel that beginning the next pool season. So free admission into our pools. There's funding for the Bill Witt Park and the Heritage Park to develop a master plan so we can really put those parks into higher production and have them the assets that we want them to be. And then additional funding for McGee Beach, North Beach, and the Gulf Beaches to improve maintenance as well as safety. Now, we know we have that community enrichment fund, and the dollars are there to improve in our community. I'm recommending in this budget several things to be implemented using those dollars. A $1.25 million allocation to the Oso Creek Hike and Bike Trail project. Trees to be planted at Bill Witt, Water's Edge Park, and other locations. Low-cost canvas shade structures at various parks. And also some improvements to the Greenwood Pool parking lot. In the area of solid waste, we're looking at improving their budget to get a better routing system so that we can be more efficient when we're out there picking up recyclables and trash. We'll also do additional street sweeping, 113 miles more in our community. And we'll convert temporary staff to permanent staff at the landfill and the Citizen Collection Center. In the area of community, we're also recommending to address a critical problem that faces our city, which is homelessness, as well as affordable housing. And so I'm recommending in this budget the redirection of 3 staff members to tackle those 2 critical issues. We also have money budgeted for the South Texas Military Task Force and the Nueces the Nueces Together census count that we talked about last week. And I'm also recommending funding for an obesity education awareness program to tackle that issue as well. $200,000 recommended. In the area of quality of life, we have some beautiful features that are being restored at the water gardens. But what we don't have up to this point is a maintenance budget for those items, and so I'm recommending dollars in the budget to help maintain that, as well as some of the features that we've put into place at the Packery Channel, some of those six-pack amenities we talked about last week. And we know that there's dollars in the budget for the Packery Channel dredging projects, as well as some significant improvements to the arena facility. We talked about recently at the Type A board meeting. We want to improve the locker room experience for the Islanders, as well as the Ice Rays, as well as the visitor experience in the actual arena as well. In the area of utilities, there's several things listed here, but the big takeaway is we're going to do a lot of in-house sourcing. So we're bringing some of these functions that are basic and essential to having a water and wastewater system, bringing them back in-house. And in total, between this and two other departments, we'll save $4.8 million by bringing these functions inside. So as an example, in wastewater, we'll be adding 38 positions to clean and televise our wastewater lines, our sewer lines. This is a basic element of that business, and sourcing it out is not the best use of our financial resources, so bringing that back inside will help us save in that area alone $3 million. In asset management, you may have noticed some of the improvements at City Hall, and we're just beginning there at this major asset of ours, but we're recommending some additional staff members to better manage our space. We have over 600 facilities, the city does. Some of them may be small, but we have several buildings, fire stations, police substations. What we've seen is that we have not the best space utilization. We have some departments split 2-3 different ways. We're going to look to see how can we bring the departments back together in one location through these various facilities with that space planner. And also bring in-house another position to help us with our HVAC systems system-wide. In our IT, we've been fortunate to have Peter Collins to help us turn that operation around. One thing he and I have talked about since I've been here, and it's been on his mind since he's been here, is our security. Our actual dollars in the bank, and our sometimes confidential and sensitive information, if not well protected, is open for the taking. And so we have money in the budget to help protect our infrastructure using the cloud for some of our data that we're storing today, as well as to set up security features for some of our enterprise features. In the area of engineering, this is another one of those departments where we're bringing some of these functions back in-house. And so we've talked about this already earlier this year, but we want to bring back some of the inspection functions and not necessarily use the engineering community in this way. We will use them in other ways, though. But by bringing this function in-house, we'll be able to save $780,000 in one fiscal year. We're also going to talk about, or we're also going to add or recommend adding a program manager to help the program managers oversee a group of some of the capital projects, and we're spread kind of thin. And so adding one more project manager will give each project manager a more manageable group of projects, as well as we're recommending to add a public information officer to help in that community outreach. We talked about some of these major corridors recently, and having the public and the business community more aware of what we're doing is part of that project. Now, this is probably one of the best slides of all, right, for the city and for the city council. And what this demonstrates is our funding recommended in the budget for street reconstruction and maintenance. And as you can see, we're at an all-time high, $128 million. That amount is more than the past 2 years combined. And so there's two things to point out. One, the voters and the residents have asked for this funding, and we have it. But I think more importantly for me is we have to deliver this. It's to show it on a chart and say we have it's one thing, but that's why this morning, meeting with all the executives, I talked to them about not only delivering on street maintenance and reconstruction, but everything I'm recommending in this budget. And so we're developing a system where the directors and our leadership team will develop implementation plans, implementation work plans, So we'll know month by month by month how can we accomplish this in one fiscal year. This isn't budgeted to spend over 3 years or 2 years. It's all to be done in this one fiscal year. And so I want to point that out in streets because this is a big commitment, but we need to make sure we can deliver. And so we're going to make sure we have the systems internally, and we may need to talk to the contracting community to make sure they can deliver as well. And that's already underway right now before October 1. I had one of the staff members put this chart together, and it looks confusing, and that's probably all we need to know about it because it shows all our funding sources and restrictions on our street reconstruction in the city. So we have 8 different funding sources to do streets in the city, and there's restrictions. So some dollars can go to residential streets, others can only go to arterial and collectors, some money's for reconstruction, others is for full-blown maintenance. So this is just a nice chart to study someday. When you have time, we'll probably bring it back up during the streets budget presentation, but it's a good holistic approach of where all our money is dedicated and what program is receiving what source of funding. In streets, another area where we're going to bring in some of the work that we have to this date sourced out is just in the simple thing of developing a work plan for what streets get done in what month and what company will help us do them and what is the application type. We're going to bring that in-house at a team of 3 people that will save us $370,000. We also have 2 initiatives in the budget to do some strategic planning of our I-37 corridor. So as you make that last mile into Corpus Christi or so, we want the experience that people see and we see to be the best that we can do. So we have some dollars to do a corridor study, as well as in Northwest Boulevard in City Council District 1. We need to work with TxDOT to make that corridor appropriate for today's day and age, including better pedestrian safety. There's some significant sidewalk gaps, so we'll do a strategic corridor study, and that way we'll know how to tackle that issue, what finances we'll need moving forward. We're also doing more pavement marking, so some of those dollars we're saving and how we prepare our street program, we're putting them into production. So today we do 44 miles of street striping. It takes us about 10 years to get the whole city done then in that type of a cycle. We'll be able to do every stripe within a 3 to 5 year time period by increasing the budget to $350,000, and we'll do 100 miles of streets. Now, in total, we're increasing the personnel complement, as I mentioned, to be able to deliver these services. And so this chart just shows us a historical trend of sworn police and fire positions as well as our civilian positions. We do have an increase in budgeted positions recommended of a little over 150 positions. And most of those, though, are actually converting what was temporary positions, especially in our solid waste operation or in our wastewater. We had numerous temps doing the work of one full-time position. But what we found out and what the departments are finding out that it's not an efficient use of time or resources. You have to train somebody every so often, every six months or so. So you train somebody, but before you know it, they're gone. And so there's cost in recruiting and in training, and then there's lost productivity because they're not really the most proficient they can be. So we're recommending in some of those initiatives I talked to you about, converting temporary staff to full-time staff. Now, in the area of employee compensation, there's an important thing, and we've already talked to the executive team about this, and we'll get the word out to the organization. But today, for all employees, there's a guaranteed pay increase every year of 2.5%. That's called the STEP pay plan that was put in place several years ago. What that does for the professional employee is discourage high productivity, because if I'm doing an okay job and this other guy's doing a superior job, I'm still going to make the same he does in terms of a pay increase. So we're going to change that pay system to a twofold one for this year, which is a cost of living increase for those employees of 1% on October. But in January, we'll look at a performance-based pay increase based on performance of the prior 12 months. And so an employee that's low performing, a professional employee, will get 0%. But a high-performing employee can get an additional 4% increase for a total of 5%. It's the same amount of money that we're using. What this system does, though, is reward and actually encourage high production and high productivity and professionalism. So I was glad to talk to the team this morning about that. The hourly employees, the non-exempt employees will still be on the STEP pay plan for this year coming. We're also, we're also trying to improve our health care plans. One of the things I've heard since I've been here as city manager is that we have not the best health care plan. And so working with Steve Vieira and our Human Resources Department and his team, we're going to introduce to the employees, the civilian employees, a third plan, which is common in the private and public sector, called the Consumer-Driven Health Care Plan, which has a health savings account that goes along with it. And so the plan has a higher premium cost at the doctors, but the employee keeps the money that they would otherwise provide to the city out of payroll deductions. And that money's flexible, it goes with the employee. And it's also, you can also invest it and have a return on interest. And we'll talk to you more about that as we go through our budget. In fire and police, the pay increases are based on the collective bargaining agreements, and the one scheduled for fire for this year is 4%, and the police is still under negotiation. And then in the area of our water rates and wastewater and gas, there's no proposed increase in either the wastewater or the gas, and in part that's because of some of those efficiency measures we've done. In the water area, we're recommending a rate that'll be for 2 years. It'll be for this year and next year. Essentially, the rate for a median residential customer would be 84 cents more per month. And then for a commercial customer, it'll be about $8.50 increase each month going forward. And then in our capital budget, this is getting close to the end here. The capital budget is significantly more robust than last year. The bond program is now getting to the construction phase, the 2018 bond program. And this chart here is pretty busy as well, but it encapsulates the entire capital budget. It's a little over $300 million, $327 million. The biggest components you can see is in our public health and safety areas, streets, and then utilities, and that table kind of summarizes it. And so the next steps, as listed here, what we talked to you about in the beginning, we'll have 4 work sessions where the council can receive much more information on these improvements and on the base operations from the leaders of each of the departments that we have selected and scheduled. They'll be on Thursdays, beginning next Thursday, from the hours of 9 to 11 or longer if the council wants to stay longer. We have those 4 budget input sessions beginning on August 12th, and then that second week on August 19th and the 22nd will conclude those 5 community hearings. And we have the public hearings in the chamber as well. And then the first reading of the budget on the 10th for the adoption, and then the final adoption by the council on the 17th. So Mayor and members of the council, I'm happy and proud to present a budget as we're presenting today. I think it's very reflective of what the community has asked for. It does not have any tax rate increases except for the one the voters already approved and are looking for us to implement on.